Hey folks, in today's short video I'm going to share with you 5 simple keys in terms of how do you express your truth that might sometimes be difficult truth, challenging truth, have challenging conversations with those people in your life that you love. My name's Kute, Blackson, nationally best-selling author of You Are the One. Folks, you know, there's always moments in any relationship where you might have disagreements. But disagreements does not have to mean the end of loving. Many times we disagree and we get pissed off, we get upset, and then the relationship breaks up. We don't speak to that person. Maybe they hurt us, maybe we're upset, maybe we did something. And so often, you know, communication is key in any relationship, and so often, because we're afraid, because we don't want to not be liked, because we don't want to rock the boat, we often suppress our truth, hold that truth, because we're afraid if I really speak my truth to my friend, to my husband, to my loved one, to my spouse, to my family member, then it will be the end of the relationship. It will change the relationship. They won't like me. Holding your truth back in order to salvage a relationship only ends up blocking the flow of intimacy, connection, and love in relationship. And the closer you are, the more layers will build up, the further apart you'll go. And it might start off as a simple withhold. I just won't say that thing hurt me, and another withhold. And before you know it, 5 years from now, you're in 2 different realities. And this is often how people grow apart. This is often how we end up carrying so much resentment, hurt, pain, shame, guilt, anger towards another person that we end up getting divorced and breaking up. And sometimes it's a surprise to the other person. So ultimately, the quality of your life is also in direct proportion to the quality of your communication. When you communicate clearly and lovingly, you set yourself free. You also clear the space between you and another person, and you don't drag the past events and experiences into the present moment relationship with this particular person. So the degree you're able to communicate clearly is going to determine how much freedom you experience. So how free do you want to be? There's so many things we suppress. You know, I don't like that. Or, you know, that when you said that, I felt a certain way. Or that really hurt me. And so what is it in your life that you know, you feel you really need to communicate with those in your life? What is it right now that you are currently, you know, you are withholding saying to someone? What is it in your life that you know you need to say, you need to express, but you're afraid to for some reason? And what is it costing you? And so if you need to have a difficult conversation, I believe ultimately the truth serves everyone, even though it may not seem that way at first. And if you need to have a difficult conversation, there's about 5 simple keys I'm going to give you in having a difficult conversation. Sometimes we get empowered. You might watch this video and say, I'm going to have a difficult conversation, and you go to your best friend or you go to your spouse and you just vomit your truth on them. And then you might come back to me and say, but Kute, it didn't work out so well. They got defensive. They got upset. I told them how I feel. You're a jerk. You pissed me off. You know, I don't like how you did that. You need to change. And you might feel as though you expressed your truth to them, but just because you express your truth or what you say is your truth doesn't mean it's going to be effective. You have to be effective and efficient and understanding in how to deliver your truth to them in a way that they can understand. Because the truth is, even if it's your truth, which may or may not be, it might be your conditioning, even if it's your truth, if it doesn't land in a way that they can hear and understand, it really makes no difference, right? And what's important is that it makes a difference in not just for you, but for them, so that you can have a breakthrough and a shift in the dynamic between you and the other person. So remember what counts. First key: before you simply blurt your truth and express your truth, your feelings towards another person, the first thing is to set the context. the context before you express the content. A mistake many people make is they just say, this is how I feel, and the other person isn't open, the other person gets pissed off, the other person feels it's not the right timing, the other person gets defensive because maybe they feel that something you're saying is threatening them and their egos, or something you're saying might be threatening your relationship with them, and they go into fear. And when we go into fear, what happens? We get defensive, right? And so before you just express your truth, which might take a tremendous amount of courage on your part, take a moment to set the context. The context is the framework for the communication. So it's pre-content, pre-communication. Before you even tell them what you're about to say, context is everything, because the context sets up their ability to listen to you. You want to manage and set up the listening so that those who you're about to communicate with are actually able to hear your heart and what you're about to express and say. So context is everything. Context might look like, making sure that they're open to hearing you. Are you open to? I love to share some things. Are you open to hearing what I'd like to express and share with you? Right? They may not be open. They might say no. You may have to honor that. And if you have to think about it this way, if it's someone that's there to you and they're not open to hearing your truth and what you have to say, that is also a communication that tells you a lot about the connection with you and that person. You may want to reevaluate why you relate to someone that is actually not open to hearing your heart's genuine truth. Context is by setting up a communication, making sure they're open, making sure it's the right time, because sometimes if they're in the middle of driving, it's not the wrong time for you to drop a truth on them. Number three, I think it's also important to share your intention for the communication. Because if you just say, boom, here's my truth, they might feel you're attacking the relationship and go into fear. They go into fear, they get defensive, they're not open, they lash back, turns into a fight. So when you set up the intention and you say, look, I want to share some deeper feelings with you, really because I love you, because I care about you, because I want our relationship to go deeper. I feel like our relationship's stuck. I feel like there's a gap between us. I want to bridge the gap. I want to heal the gap. I want us to get close again because you are valuable to me, because your relationship means a lot to me, because I love you. This is setting up the context. Now, when you share, there's an understanding, there's a framework that's going to make them much more able to hear you, to listen to you, to be open without getting defensive. Even though what you're saying might be difficult, they're able to hear it, right? Oh, they're saying this not to leave me. They're saying this because they want to work this relationship through. Oh, okay, let me listen through a different lens. Context. The next thing is connection. Make sure before you just speak to them, you don't speak from your mind, you don't speak from your ego. When we're in our ego, we come from being right and proving that we're right, and we want to sort of ram our opinion and our reality down the other person's throat. So don't speak from your ego or your mind. Make sure before you have a communication that you connect, that you take a moment to connect to this moment, and to also connect to how you really feel, your feelings, your sensitivity, your vulnerability, your emotion, your feeling. Because I think communication really is about, yes, logic and words, but it's about feeling. And if people, even if you say the wrong words, even if you don't quite say it the right way, if people can feel your intention, but they can feel your heart in the communication, even if you stutter, even if you make a few mistakes, the other person will be able to feel where you're coming from, and that feeling is what will land for them. That feeling is what will transmit to them. That feeling is what they will connect to and be able to hear, right? Communication is only really 7% words. Then 7% words is really the essence of communication. So that's a tiny bit of the entire pie of your true, authentic communication. So connect your emotions, share from your heart, share vulnerably, share authentically. Number 3 is communicate. Communicate authentically, communicate with love, communicate your truth, communicate responsibly. By responsibly, what I mean is you have a right to feel how you feel. You have a right to share your feelings and emotions and to share your perspective. Just make it clear that it's your feelings. So responsibly is not pointing the finger at another person and saying, you made me feel a certain way, or you're a jerk, or you're a bad person, or it's your fault that I'm this way or that I feel this way. That's kind of like coming from a victim perspective and pointing the finger at them. There's no reality in that. What you have a right to experience, whether right or wrong, is how you feel. Not you made me feel. This is how John, so you might say to your partner or your friend, John, I feel sad when we had that conversation. I feel a certain way. See, when you're saying I feel this way, you're not making it about the other person. You're not making it about what they did or what they didn't do. You're taking full responsibility for how you feel. And if they get defensive, you can say, look, I'm not pointing the finger. This is how I feel. You have a right to feel how you feel. They have a right to feel how they feel. So make sure you're not blaming them, making them wrong, but you're owning your feelings fully in the communication and sharing how you feel, because that will let them into your world, but is also not making it about them. You're owning your reality and making it clear that this is not necessarily the way it is or the truth. It's your reality. You have a right to your reality, because ultimately everybody's right. From their own perspective, everybody's right. That doesn't mean it's the truth. That doesn't mean it's right. But, from my perspective, I'm right. From your perspective, you're right. That doesn't mean it's right. And we have to be willing to let go of our desire to be right and be more committed to having a breakthrough in the connection and the relationship. And so one reason I found, when you have a difficult conversation and you express truth to someone, one thing I have found, if you might say, Kute, but I shared everything and we're still going around in circles. That usually means that there is a deeper level of truth. Please hear me. There's a deeper level of truth that needs to be expressed. There's a deeper level of truth that hasn't been expressed, that hasn't been communicated, that still needs to be shared. Either you're withholding something or they're withholding something, but check if you're still going around in circles, is there something more I need to express? Is there a deeper vulnerability, a feeling I need to access? Is there some truth that I'm afraid to say and I'm afraid to go to that level? That is usually the level that will keep things stuck. I have found that when two people communicate at the deepest levels of truth together, there's usually an opening that occurs in the relationship and everything starts flowing again. It takes a lot of courage to communicate with truth and with love and with responsibility. After you do that, I would say the next thing is to really take the time to check in on the other person's perception. Check in on what they heard. And then key is listen. Listen to where they're at. Listen to how they feel. Listen to their understanding of what you said to them and what you shared with them, to make sure, firstly, they understood, but also listen to their perspective. When you truly try and seek to understand where the other person is, where they're coming from, how that person came to their conclusions, came to feeling the way they feel, that drove them to do what they did that may have hurt you, really seek to understand, because your interpretation of reality may not be the reality. If you really listen, you might understand that they thought they were doing something loving for you and it hurt you, but really they didn't mean to hurt you, and you thought they meant to hurt you, but they really didn't. So usually we're making up an interpretation and a story of what happened that may not be what really happened. And so take a moment to just sit back and listen. Listening will help you understand, put yourself in the other person's shoes to know where they're coming from, so that you can hopefully come into a sense of understanding, resonance, and compassion with the other person, right? Lastly is action. What action needs to be taken from the conversation? You have the conversation, you express the conversation, action. There's some action. Is there some action you need to take? Is there some amends you need to make? Is there someone you need to make a phone call to as a result of the communication, right? Action is important. Conversation without action doesn't always mean anything. If you say, I'm sorry, but you keep doing the same thing, and you keep doing the same thing over and over again, what use is the apology? So implementing whatever is needed from your challenging, difficult, authentic, heartfelt conversation, so that you can embody is part of what takes the invisible and makes it tangible so that you can shift your relationship together. As an additional key, at the end of the conversation, I would always add, really appreciate and acknowledge. Appreciate and acknowledge the other person for their willingness to hear you. Appreciate and acknowledge them for who they are in your life. Appreciate and acknowledge them for being willing to have a difficult conversation. Because look, folks, all of us, we come from different backgrounds. I'm me, you're you, different backgrounds. There's stories going on inside of me. There's stories going on inside of the other person, inside of you. And it's even amazing that we can have a conversation somewhat and not drive each other crazy. And so I think when you can really get in touch with the miracle of what it is to communicate and how you never know what someone's going through, I think it then becomes easier to focus on acknowledgement and appreciation of the other person for their willingness to even try. Because you never know what they're dealing with. You never know their history and their story. You never know their childhood patterns. And so it is delicate being a human being. Make sure you acknowledge the other person for having a challenging and difficult conversation with you. Folks, if you enjoyed this short video on how to have and express your truth, 5 keys, actually 6 keys to expressing your truth and having a difficult conversation with those in your life that you love, make sure you share this video with everyone in your life. Try having a difficult conversation. Follow me on social media, Instagram, YouTube, subscribe to my channel. Also, go to my website, kuteblackson.com, enter your name and your email, and I will connect with you soon. Love now.